It is truly an inspiring lecture, and as I said, you have to see it. It can't be fully appreciated if you just read it. So you need to either purchase the DVD or watch it on a place like, well, YouTube. The reason that it has to be seen is you have to watch Randy Pausch getting down on the floor and doing push-ups to show that he's still in good health, despite the fact that he's dying of cancer. You have to see the visual aids, pictures of Jackie Robinson and Walt Disney, pictures of him flying around and floating in zero gravity. You have to see his smile and hear the complete lack of self-pity in his voice. All these things can only be appreciated if you actually watch the lecture. Now, when I first heard about it, my brother Barry wrote about it in a blog, and a member of this congregation named Hugo Wildman told me about it. When they told me that I absolutely had to see it, my initial reaction was something along the lines of, yeah, I'm sure it's lovely. But trust me, watch this lecture and you will be inspired. Still, the purpose of this sermon, as interesting as Pirkei Avot and the last lecture are, it's not just to get you to watch and read these things. This isn't a sermon about achieving your childhood dreams, and I'm not going to be giving a verse-by-verse comparison of Rabbi Hillel and Professor Pausch. No, the purpose of my sermon tonight is to try to convince you to observe just one commandment in the Torah. You see, the Torah has approximately 211,000 letters, approximately 35,000 words, and exactly 613 commandments. The first one that we encounter in the book of Genesis is Pru Uravu, be fruitful and multiply. The last one, Kitvu lachem et hashira hazot, write for yourselves this song, which the rabbinical sages say means write down your own Torah. That every Jewish person needs to write his or her own Torah. But how do you do that? As far as I know, no one that I'll be talking to on Rosh Hashannah, and very few of you watching this, are trained as a scribe, as a sofer. You can't write your own Torah. So the rabbinical sages say another way to observe it is to commission a Torah. And if you have about $35,000, you can commission your own Torah. But if you have that kind of money to dedicate to the Jewish community, particularly ours, we've got other needs. We already have 7 Torah scrolls. What we need is a new school building. Now you can also fulfill this commandment by commissioning even one letter of one Torah. That counts too. But we're not talking about that kind of project here tonight either. No, there is another way that you can observe this commandment to write your own Torah. And that's because Torah also means teaching. Not just the scrolls that we have in the Ark, but Torah means teaching. And the way that I hope to encourage us to observe and fulfill this commandment, this mitzvah, is for each of us to write our own Torah. Pirkei Avot, those sayings represent the Torah of some of our most important rabbinical sages. These were the values and the teachings that they wanted to pass on to their students and their children and their disciples. It is not upon us to finish the task, but neither are we free to desist from it. That's Rabbi Tarfon's Torah. If I am not for myself, who will be for me? And if I am only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? That's the Torah of Rabbi Hillel. And Rabbi Ben Bagbag, who our children love and know so well, his Torah is to turn it over and over again, for you will find everything in it. These are the sayings and the values that they wanted to pass on to future generations. Randy Pausch's last lecture, that's his Torah. Will Smith, the actor, entertainer, rapper, he has his Torah too. And he wrote a song, a rap, called Just the Two of Us, based on a Stevie Wonder tune, where he raps out advice to his young son. He says, hold chairs, say your prayers, easy on the swears. And my children love this rap. They love the Torah of Will Smith. They make me listen to it over and over and over again. Well, you too can write your own Torah. You see, these lectures, these sayings, these statements, Pirkei Avot, Professor Posh, Will Smith, these are actually part of a long tradition we have in Judaism called the ethical will, where you bequeath not your possessions, but your values to your loved ones. You talk about the things that matter to you most in life. I even have a book in my office, a collection of ethical wills called So That Your Values Live On. We actually had a seminar about ethical wills at one of our Cineplex synagogue events last year. It was facilitated by David Levin, who's an attorney in our congregation who utilizes ethical wills in his practice. And I remember one of the people in our group said, well, if my mother were to write an ethical will, she'd put stuff in it like, use more hand lotion while you're young. And indeed, ethical wills can be as practical as you want to make them. But they're really more about who you are as a human being, the values that you want to pass on to others. And by the way, you don't have to be old to write an ethical will, to write your own Torah. You don't have to have children either. You just have to have values that you want to pass on. But how exactly do you do that? I mean, you can take your 8-year-old or your 16-year-old or your 42-year-old and you can say, sit down, my son, while I lecture you on my life and the many values that I've culled from it. I'm going to pass on this wisdom to you. Well, I think you'll find that they're suddenly going to have many more important things to do. But later on in life, they will appreciate it. So you have to write it down. Years ago, this would have been done with pen and ink, written in a letter. Today, you might do it in a Word document, in an email, maybe even in a text message. But you have to write it down and you have to print it out and put it someplace where someone might actually find it. Because again, while they might not appreciate it at this moment in time, eventually they will. It's a precious gift that you're giving to them, these values. And it's also a precious gift that you're giving to yourself. Because by writing these things down, by being forced to think about the values which are really important to you, you're going to realize some things about yourself. You're going to realize that your life has purpose and it has meaning. Because this ethical will isn't so much about where you've lived or what you've done or all the people you might have met. It's about who you are and why you are. The very purpose of your life. And really, by undertaking this exercise, you will realize that your life does have meaning, purpose, and value. But it starts by writing it down. And writing it down in a place where people can actually find it. A rabbi named Eddie Feinstein, who works at Valley Beth Shalom congregation in Encino, California, told a group of rabbis, and I was a part of this group, a story about a time where he was dealing with a funeral and he went to the deceased's house to meet with the children to plan the funeral. And he talked to them and he said, tell me, what was your father like? And they said, well, he liked to golf. And he said, no, not what did your father like to do, but what was he like? And they said, well, he was a golfer. So he tried another approach. He said, well, what were some of his goals in life? And they said, well, he wanted to lower his handicap, and he wanted to get a hole-in-one. And this went back and forth. No matter how profoundly he would put the question, the answer kept coming back to golf. Now, I know a lot of golfers, and they're very passionate about their sport, and it actually is possible that golf was all there was to this man. But probably not. There were probably so many more aspects to this man's life, but he never shared them with his children